And we're back.
Hey.
Hope you guys had a good week. He was singing right before we started.
Yeah.
So
we're talking about trampoline, and so it was bouncing, and it's fun.
Yep.
Hope you guys had a good week.
Yeah. This week we're talking about trampoline, and did not think I was gonna cry during this one. It's crazy to me how it's like, oh, it's no, I'm not gonna cry. You know, the ones that you know you're gonna cry, it's like, okay, you know, yeah, I'm definitely gonna cry during this. And then there's other ones and I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna cry during this. And then all of a sudden it's like, nope, did not make it through this without crying.
Literally about Bandit trying to get to work
and playing. And it's amazing how many lessons I feel like that they teach, and it makes so much sense. And you know, in looking at the different articles and parenting books that we were, the concept of play-based learning and like our kids acknowledging and like being able to grasp concepts better, especially when they're young, through play, was like this theme that keeps coming up that we keep seeing. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, and it makes me feel a little whatever though that Bandit has, and I guess by design, enough free time to play with the kids before breakfast, because they already would have had that breakfast, I imagine, and he already has his backpack ready to go. Yeah. And it's okay, we'll run out to the trampoline for a few minutes and play. And I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and building in space to be able to do that. It's I feel like that would have to be an intentional decision, because a lot of the time, like, you know, getting up this morning and getting around and everybody get breakfast and okay, who's got clothes on and who's still in their pajamas. So we're sitting at tables like, two of you are still in pajamas. What's going on this morning? And so I feel like there would have to be some intentionality with timing and making that happen.
And if one of the kids is sitting there at breakfast and doesn't want to eat, what happens? Have we seen that? Have we seen a picky eater breakfast one?
We kind of see when it's the little bingo or little Bluey, the one where they trade places.
And I don't like to eat.
And they talk about how different things that they like or don't like, and then
broccoli, I think, was one that was brought up.
Magic asparagus is another episode where they talk about like not wanting to eat certain things, and the unicorse one, right. Where unicorse doesn't. Yes, we have several episodes memorized.
Wow, okay. That was a lot more than I remember.
I started going and we're like, oh crap.
Okay, but this one reminds me of Yoga Ball at the beginning, where I'm working from home today, kids, and I don't have time to play. I got to get to work. And they're like, play the elevator game. And he's like, I don't have time to play the game. And he's playing the game. And it feels very much like the same thing. Yeah. Bandit has to go to work, but the priority is still, I'm still playing with you kids. I really do have to go to work, but...
And I feel like, and I work from home, and so that to me is a little bit of a different dynamic, but it still feels kind of that same, where it's like, as much as I would really love to be playing with you or to do with you right now, I have to go to work. You know, even though it's here, it's still go to work. And it's hard. And you know, he's like, I don't want to leave, guys, but I have to go. And in that, kids not understanding, and we're going through that right now with our kids, not understanding commitments like work. And like, so this last week we had an eye appointment that literally has been set for the last 6 months for our oldest, and get up that morning and she's like, I don't feel like going to the eye doctor. It's like, that's there, can't just, this is not one that you just get to decide.
Yeah,
you just don't want to go do this morning. Like, there's commitments here, and like with work, and there's certain things, and trying to explain when you make a commitment to do something, it's important to, your word is important, and your people being able to trust you is important. And if we say we're going to do something, then it's important that we do that. And so that's something that we're having to go through right now is helping her to understand, if we have to go to work, it's not because we don't want to play with you. It's because we are committed to this job and have a commitment to work a certain number of hours every day, or a certain, project every day. And so explaining that, and so what we've started doing and we, the parenting coach that I found online, and it was actually like 3 different ones had basically the same concept.
Yeah.
But they were talking about how important it is to start teaching our kids the concept of, what was the responsibility. The last one that I showed you, she used a term and I really liked it, and I'm using my phone to record, so I can't pull it up on my phone. But she was talking about how part of the family team is all of us working together to basically have jobs. And as kids, your kids have jobs, and Bandit goes in and he's like, your job is to make up games and to do the dishes, and he listed several different things that are Bluey's, I'll say, chores around the house. And what she was talking about, and I can post it later, the coach that I literally can't pull up her website to say which one, but she was talking about how those responsibilities and having kids have those jobs to be part of the team starts teaching our kids the importance of work and the importance of commitment. You say you're going to, empty the dishwasher. You say you're going to do dishes. You say you're going to make your bed. You need to follow that up. You need to do that because that is your job. And that's super important for kids to start learning early, because that builds that responsibility in their brain.
And what we started doing was creating just like a daily, we'll say chores, but it was more of a checklist, and it was like get up, brush teeth, change clothes, have breakfast. And they're all things that they can do mostly by themselves. And it really did help them get up and get started on the day.
And they love checking those boxes off.
They do. And they really, there are some mornings when, for example, they didn't want to change out of their pajamas. And they can all change themselves. They're all perfectly capable of getting changed by themselves, which is great. But sometimes they didn't want to. But having the checklist where every day they did it, it really did help them actually do it.
Yeah. And it was setting that expectation of this is the list. This is the expectation that we have of you. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a surprise where it's like, I haven't changed your clothes. I didn't know you wanted me to change my clothes.
Yes. And having it written down and explained to them beforehand so when they could do it, it worked. And the one you showed me, it gave age-appropriate examples of so from 2 to 3 all the way up to teenagers, and things that they can do perfectly well at more or less at their age level. And it's those sort of things, teaching them that really does help them understand, hey, as adults and even as kids, you're going to be asked to do things that you don't want to do. I'm sure Bandit probably would have preferred to stay home and play with the kids in that instance. But like you said, there's commitments you have to do. Now, one thing that you'd mentioned was specifically about things that annoy us that our kids do. And it was someone saying that the thing that annoys you the most about your kid could be their greatest strength. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay. And for example, I looked at this episode and it's like, okay, Bluey makes up a lot of games, and not all the games are really fun for Bandit, right? So I'm sure there's times when Bandit's like, I don't want to play the game right now. But he doesn't discourage her. Instead, he's realized that she has a talent for coming up with things to do and games to occupy her and Bingo's time. And he's encouraging it. And he's encouraging it the whole time. he doesn't shoot them down when they try to come up with new ideas. He's just constantly encouraging it. And then even at the end, that's part of your job. Yeah. And with our kids, some of the things like Lenny loves telling stories.
She loves telling stories.
And sometimes it's a little bit of an annoying thing because she'll be telling stories to herself or her sister or brother instead of listening to what we're doing as a family. And so it's like, okay, this is something she's really good at. And I don't want to discourage that. So instead, we're trying to find a way for her to have time to do that. That's kind of devoted time for that. Mm-hmm. Whether it's 10 minutes to 30 minutes, we're trying to, that's what we're working on right now, is trying to carve out what that time looks like to where she gets to do that. Mm-hmm. And that way, she knows that every day she gets this opportunity to do something she likes and have that be hers. To where hopefully, when we're asking her to do other stuff at other periods of time in the day, it's not a deal. It's not like, well, I really want to do this. It's like, no, you get time to do that too. And it's finding a way to prioritize time in a way that matters. Mm-hmm. And obviously, if everyone was just Bluey, Bandit, and Chili, it would just be perfect, but we're not. So we have to actually work on it and try to figure it out.
Yeah. But it's something. The other day she walked in the room. She's in full storytelling mode. She walks in the room. She's like, "I'm sorry, he's allergic to people. You're gonna have to leave." I have no idea what the story was. She was telling me, she comes and she says that, and she's like completely earnest and straight face. And I just cracked up because it's like, it's so funny. And I have no idea like what the rest of the story was. And I talked to her later, but just her walking in the room and full like performance mode and saying that and then walking off, I'm like, okay. But so it's a lot of fun, but it's also it can be annoying at times. And so what they were saying, that it's not just finding ways where it's not annoying, but yes. They also went so far as to say these are strengths that you can help your child develop into a talent, and then from there can end up being part of them. And there's a lot of naturally gifted people, but when those natural gifts aren't encouraged and they're not built, and how many times as a kid were we told stop doing that, and when it was something that was annoying to our parents. And
can I?
Yes.
Cricket.
Yes.
I'm thinking of and we're jumping ahead obviously a couple of seasons, but cricket where Rusty is playing cricket in the front yard and he hits one of the balls into his mom's kitchen and she looks at him.
She's doing dishes and he hits the ball into her face.
Yeah.
I'm like,
so, and sometimes kids are going to do stuff like that, and it's instead of you'll never play cricket again, she doesn't.
Yeah. And
he ends up apparently becoming a world famous cricket player. Right. That sort of thing.
Yeah. And that's helping them develop. That's that, okay, your biggest annoyance could be your child's biggest strength if you help them to develop that, and teaching them how to develop that. It's not okay for her. She will, tune out everything else so that she can tell her stories. And it's not bad to tell stories, but it's timing. And then we started working on how developing stories with her and being able to say, okay, this is a protagonist and an antagonist and this is plot, and just kind of like starting to help her develop what does a story look like? What does a good story mean? And she's so creative, in that. And it was kind of eye-opening because before, it was really easy to kind of go into you just need to stop. Now is not the time. You need to stop. And that was kind of an eye-opening post for us, because it was like, the last thing that I want to do is break my child. That I told one of my sisters here the other day, you know, one of my goals in life would be, if my kids don't need therapy when they grow up because of me, that would be awesome. And so, you know, but it's just kind of that, how do we help them? But one of the things in the grace-based parenting book, when we've talked about it a couple of times here, that we've gone through, he talks about the proverb, the train up your child in the way they should go, and how, you know, a lot of the time we think of that as, you know, here's the road, walk on the road. But how that's actually phrased and the wording that's actually used is like your child is a bow, like a bow and arrow. And you are pulling your kid back in the bow so that they can shoot straight. And it's not our job to bend them. They already have a bend. God's already given them a bend, a natural bend of their talents and their abilities. It's our job to help them, to stretch them, and to pull them back, and then release them to where they are going the direction that God wants them to go. I think it was the same lady that posted, and it was, God is giving each of our children a testimony. Mm-hmm. And it is their testimony, not ours. And that, like, kind of hit me a little bit hard, because on the one hand, like, I want to protect them. I want them to be super smart and to go as far as, you know, they can, and all of these things. But then again, what is my job as the parent? And, you know, we've talked before, love God, love people, and then trying to help them find that natural bend, so that when they are older, when, you know, we get to that ready to release them, you know, where they get to go do their own, you know, that they're being fired in the direction that God has set for them.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that I feel like is helpful is, especially if you're trying to do that same thing, is try to figure out how to encourage your kids' talents and strengths, is ask yourself, how can this thing be used to be of service to others? Mm-hmm. The verse that stood out was 1 Peter 4:10. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. Yeah. And it's different forms, and it's whatever gift you've received. And everyone has one. What's theirs? Yeah. How can that be used? So, for example, Bluey. 90% of the episodes, it feels like she's just making up games to play with Bingo. Okay. But then there's episodes like this one where she comes back and Bingo's sad and depressed, and she thinks of a game to play that also Chili is able to enjoy. Yeah. And then I'm thinking of the one where the circus, where she ends up creating a game that all the kids get to play, even the bully, and she's even able to rope in the bully into playing the game too. And she's naturally inclined to do that. And her parents have been helping her, encouraging her to hone that strength, skill, that strength, in a way where she can use it to help others. Yeah. So whatever talent it is, it should be something that is of service to people. And
you called me out a little bit on this, because when I first read this, I was like, okay, so what job? You know, how can they make money? How can they, you know, I'm thinking like career-wise, what does this look like in 20 years? And he's like, okay, but stop. You know, just because something is a strength, it can be used to serve, and it can be used to help other people. It doesn't always have to be for monetary gain. And that was like, okay, you know, that was yeah. Our brains went two different directions with it. But I felt like that was really good, that a strength doesn't always have to be something that makes us money or gets us ahead in life. A strength can also be a service to others and to other people.
And there's 100,000 verses about work and don't be a sluggard and work hard. But there are a couple that just jumped out, and one, it's Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. And then Ecclesiastes 9:10, which Colossians might have been quoting. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. Mm-hmm. And it's those things where we model that by doing it. Yeah. And it's not just going to work, but also it's hobbies. It's doing the dishes. It's doing all the things, the chores, the things you don't want to do as well. It's modeling that as well. And it's, I have to do this, or I want to do this, and so I'm going to do it as well I can in the time I have.
Yeah.
And then teaching our kids that. And I feel like it's trying to hit a moving target a little bit because you're trying to teach them in a way where it's like, one, okay, let's get the toys up off the floor. Okay, now let's not just throw all the toys into one pile somewhere else on the floor. And it's, okay, let's put this where it goes. And it's kind of that progression from as they get younger to, okay, this is kind of setting proper expectations. And I feel like as adults, sometimes we need to set our own expectations for ourselves that are doable and realistic, right? And it's funny, when in the financial world, whenever we talked about like budgeting goals, it had to have a defined time frame and a defined amount and how much is possible per paycheck, that kind of thing. It had to be very clear and precise. Yeah. Because if not, you probably weren't going to hit it. Like 90% chance you weren't going to hit it unless you were able to set clear, defined, realistic expectations. Yeah. And it's the same thing, I feel like, with chores and responsibilities and all that sort of thing. So it's finding those things and encouraging those things to be of service.
Well, and like you said, setting the example. And I feel like that's easier said than done in some things, where it's easy for me to be like, okay, you need to have a better attitude about this. You need to have this is what we need to do and this is what we need to get done. And then I get into a situation where I'm needing to get, something done and I'm sitting here grumbling and complaining. I was like, so that's what they see is, and what we make normal is what our kids will think is normal and see as normal. And so if we are doing our work as unto the Lord, even if it's housework, even if it's dishes, even if it's making dinner, and they're seeing us work, a little bit more because of working from home, and seeing, me writing emails and working on the computer some, they're being able to see that as well. And so they're being able to apply a little bit more of what a job looks like and housework looks like. Just a second. Yes, buddy.
Wait a minute.
Okay, just a second.
Wait a minute.
Youngest one got up there. It's fine. I was going to try to carry on with what she was saying, but I feel like she was saying it really well, so I'm not going to do that. And part of this, the reason why this episode was, I feel like, a little hard is because it is, at the end, he does have to say goodbye and go off to work. And it's kind of got that sad, bye, Dad. And it's there's going to be things that you have to do because you have to do them. They have to get done. And you see the family does prioritize each other and their family and their friends and their relationship and their community. And you see that even in like the sign where they decide, spoiler alert, the sign, you've probably already seen it though, not to go move for Dad's job, but to find something else and stay, right? So you see that they clearly have that commitment. But still, he's got to go. And in fact, in this one, he's taking the bus, it sounds like, because he's walking off, right? And so it's that, how do we create that time. You were in the middle of something. I didn't want to.
He turned off his light. He has a night light in his room, and he had turned it off and was saying, "Oh, it's time to get up because my light is off." It's like, no, you just turned it off. Anyway, no, I was saying that they see it. When we're doing chores, when we're doing our work, if you're a stay-at-home mom, if you are a professional, how you even talk about work. They're being able to see me actually work a little bit because I work from home, but just if you work outside the home, how you talk about work, how you talk about your job. Because if we're negative about talking about that, they pick that up. And they pick up that negativity or positivity. So even if you were working outside the home, just how we talk about our jobs and how we talk about what we're doing, even talking about it should be as unto the Lord. That's where I was going with it.
Good.
So.
Okay. And I didn't want to.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Try to make up how you're going to end it, because I think you did it way better. So we really liked it.
Yeah.
But it did have a bit of a hard episode at times for that we weren't necessarily expecting, having seen it before. It's like, it's an episode about playing games. Well,
and I feel like because you're going to be traveling some for work, that it's a little bit harder, for us right now, because of the change that we're going through with work being different.
Yeah.
Being able to play with the kids has been easier because of not having to travel and now it's like, I have to go and you need to do your job here at the house, and I have to go and do my job, and whatever that is going to look like. And that kind of hit different, where it's, he was telling Bluey her job, and he was going to go do his job, and that's kind of the situation that we're in as well. And it was like, I'm not crying, I just cut up onions, and we literally had onions for lunch earlier, and so I was like, yeah, sure, it's just the leftover, I just leftover onions, carried over from earlier. So yeah, life change is hard, but it's going and growing and doing what it's interesting. And it's easy to say, do what God tells you to do. And it's easy to tell our kids, we're doing what God tells us to do. And then we start walking that out. And something as easy as a Bluey, something as easy as, these kids shows, or something, and Pastor Craig's sermons, we'll sit there and they'll make a comment, and it's like, a year ago that would have hit different. A year ago I might not have even heard that. But as you're walking through the hard things, as you're walking through the things that don't make you happy, but the things that are still important, and how important that is, and teaching our kids, to hold on with open hands and let God work in us and through us, that we can give away. And as we're teaching them their talents, as we're teaching them their jobs, it's also teaching them to let God use them, and not really knowing what the future is going to look like. It's a little scary sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
Yeah. Really quick sidebar. The thing that annoys you most about kids, if it's something like their floor is always dirty, I don't know how to make that a talent or a strength. If you have an idea, let me know.
Our 5-year-old is like, how do we make throwing fits into a talent? How do we, she's really good at it. So what's the talent here? we're still working on that one.
And maybe something else will come along that's like, oh, that's the thing.
That was the thing.
But until then, we'll pray for wisdom.
We're still praying.
Yeah.
We're still praying on some of our kids.
Yeah.
So.
If you have prayer requests, let us know.
Absolutely.
We're right at time, so we'll go ahead and call it. Good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Father God, we thank you for this time, for this group. God, help us to have wisdom in how we show our kids what we're called to do and how we serve others and use our gifts and talents that way. Help us to be encouraging and uplifting and not crush our kids, but instead encourage the gifts and talents you put into them as well. Thank you for going before us. Strengthen this group and the families here. In Jesus' name, amen.
Guys, have a good week.
See you next time.